Hello, long time no see. I haven't made a video in a while. I apologise for that. There have been a number of reasons, and yeah, just life. So I decided that I've got a new camera, or new to me camera, and I decided that it might be a good time to make a video about it, maybe get back into doing a few YouTube videos. We'll see. And yeah, so that is what I'm doing now. The new to me camera is Pentax 67. This particular one is the mirror lockup version. The reason I got this was I was using the RZ all the time. That was my main camera and got to a point where it's just getting a bit too heavy. I ended up taking it on holiday and it was amazing. It's my favorite camera to use. I absolutely love it. Just the weight, which is normally one of the things that people complain about, and I understand. It is a heavy camera and it is very, very, it's just not the most portable camera in the world. So I wanted to stick with 6x7. I like the 6x7 format. I love the image quality and figured that the best way to do that would be to get something less modular while also giving me the same negative size, as well as not as sharp lenses, but some very well regarded lenses. So yeah, this is the Pentax 67, in case no one was knowing. This is an SLR camera, which literally looks like a normal SLR, 35mm SLR. The difference being that the negative size is 6x7, so it's 6x7 negative, so it's very, very big. So medium format, 120 or 220 if you can find it. The main advantage of this to me, again, was this is a lot smaller. So whereas before I was used to RZ, this sort of size, then going down to this sort of size made a lot of sense. This is going to be more modular. It's slightly more customizable, so things like a prism and removable backs, very, very good. But at the same time, Pentax 67, what you lose in that sort of customizability, you do gain up in, well, just sort of size and form factor. So 6x7, Pentax 6x7. This thing is still a beast. This is still a very big and heavy camera by most standards. The advantage of that is that with the larger negative you get essentially more resolution. There's going to be more grains of silver and more surface area of film to expose to, so you end up getting better dynamic range, you get slightly better separation. So by using longer lenses to get a field of view of, say, a 50, you're using 100mm, 105, 110-ish, and that will give you the depth of field of 110, 105, while giving you the field of view of a 50. So it gives you more separation than you would get with 35. Plus, I've kind of grown accustomed to that look. With the 6x7 RZ, I'd used it pretty much continually for, I want to say, about 3 years, and it was my main camera. And I have come to love, or not come to love, I have stuck with 6x7 because I love it. I think it's sort of the ideal format. The aspect ratio is just perfect, and yeah, everything else I've tried I've just not been a fan of. So Pentax 6x7. As with most SLRs, interchangeable lenses. So you take the lenses off. Here I've got this is the 90mm lens. This is a 90mm 2.8. The main reason for that being this is one of the smaller lenses in the range. Not quite as highly regarded as, say, the 105 2.4 or the 75mm 2.8, but I've been surprised. It's a very, very nice lens. Not quite as sharp as the Mamiya. So the Mamiya, I've been using the 110 2.8, and that is definitely a sharper lens. However, given the smaller nature of this lens and the whole the smaller system, I found this fairly comparable in a lot of ways. So I find that colors are going to look kind of similar. The coatings on this lens are going to be older than the Mamiya lens just because the Mamiya is a newer system. However, yeah, I think the size of the negative really does have more of an impact on the final image than sort of just the lens in itself, giving sort of tonal ranges and dynamic range. That sort of thing will have more of an impact than the lens. But that being said, the 90mm isn't as sharp. It will also give me a slightly wider field of view than the 110. So with 6x7, what you need to do for focal lengths is divide the focal length in half, is usually the most accurate way to get the equivalent 35mm focal length. That is because the diagonal distance, so from corner to corner of the negative, is twice that of a 35mm negative, approximately. It varies from camera to camera because they vary in exact millimeter size, but general rule of thumb, if it's 6x7 and whatever lens you've got on there, half it. So the 90mm becomes, say, a 45, the 110mm becomes the 55, so it's a little bit tighter. So I just kind of prefer it for portraiture, whereas the 90 is slightly more environmental portraiture. And you'll probably see that in some of the photos that I'm going to show later, that you can get more of a surrounding in than you could do with, say, the 110 and the Mamiya. So although I'm saying that this isn't quite so customizable as the Mamiya, you don't have removable backs. As you can see, it's a fixed back, and when I open the camera, there's a little pin down the side here. Pull the pin down, back door opens, and there's your shutter. Film goes in here, new film goes in here, and pull it across, that goes to the empty reel over here, and then you would obviously advance to get through that. Then that's fixed, so you can't change back. So if you decide you want to shoot color or a different ISO, you either have to finish the roll that's in there or have a backup body with another roll of film in it. You do have options for shooting 220, so if you push the pressure plate down and slide to the side, it pops up and says you push it to the right and it'll be 220, push it to the left, it'll be 120. That changes how much pressure is on the back of the film to keep it flat, because with 220 there's no backing paper, so it's just film. So you need less pressure to keep the film where you want it, essentially on the focal plane. So let's put that back, that's back in 220. And little trick with this, if you want to fire the shutter when you don't have film in it, what you need to do is open the back, and let's see if we can see this. On the little frame counter here, there's a little sort of nailed bit where it's slightly ridged. So you need to press that and then turn, so it goes past 0, and then while you're holding that, close the back, and then your numbers will be past 0, and that will let you advance it, and that will let you fire it. This is a fully electronic camera. There's a mechanical shutter speed, which can be triggered by the little dimple here. The camera requires a battery, which is located in the bottom here, and that's taken out just by pulling that out, pulling this little metal bit out, turning, and then removing. There's your battery. It's a LR44 or PX28, and that's the same as a Mamiya. It's the same as a lot of cameras, Canon AE1s, Nikon Mat EL. There's a lot of cameras that take that battery, so it should be fairly easy to find. But yeah, fully electronic shutter. That can be a problem with the cameras, just means that there are potentially more things to go wrong with them and more things to go wrong that are unrepairable. That being said, they're generally quite robust cameras, so if they do have faults, usually it is with the moving parts, sort of lubrication is drying out, things like that, so they can be cleaned and reset. However, always bear in mind that if the electronics do fail, it could be that you need to buy a replacement body rather than just being able to get it fixed as parts are no longer available. It also means that there are more pros and cons. So the requirement of having a battery means that you're prone to battery drain. So if you're out in cold weather, then the battery can go flat quicker and then the camera will stop working. If there's a circuit or a capacitor on the battery on the circuit which is going to be draining more power, that could drain the battery and then the camera won't work. If you're out in the field and the battery just dies, camera's useless. So yeah, that's another thing to bear in mind. The price of 6x7s, and particularly the Pentax, have gone up significantly in the last few years. It's still possible to get the early models, so the Pentax 6x7, which was the original, and the Pentax 6x7 MLU, so mirror lockup, which is what this one is, and you can tell that by the little switch on the side here. That will lock the mirror up and then let you fire the camera separately. That's slightly more affordable than the later versions, which is the Pentax 6.7, so no cross in between the 6 and the 7, and the 6.7 II, which is significantly more expensive. That, however, is a very different beast and much more recent than a lot of other medium format cameras. The 6.7 II was actually manufactured until 2009, so it was actually one of the last 6x7 cameras in production in the world. That, however, means more reliance on electronics, but more capable features. So you get things like metered prisms that are going to be much more sort of ergonomic than the standard prisms, as well as LCD displays and a load of other options that, yeah, just give you more freedom with your photography. So the older versions, the 6x7, the 6x7 MLU and the 6.7, have these older prisms, which you can release by pressing the two silver pins. You press those and the prism, and that's how you remove the prism. Press the two pins and then the prism comes out. That is then housed, if you have a look here, big ground glass, there's my ceiling. So ground glass in these can be replaced, however you need to remove the screws and these little metal sort of, I don't know, struts in order to replace the focusing screen. Nice thing about this is that the focusing screen that they normally come with has a patch in the middle which makes it slightly easier to focus, whereas things like the RZ, the RB and Hasselblad and a lot more of those other interchangeable systems, the focusing screen in those is normally a plain screen, so you don't get that focusing aid which the Pentax usually have. You'll also see that up here there's a strip, so this gap in the plate here is designed for a very thin metal chain. Now the metal chain will interface with the metered prism and communicate the aperture value to the prism so that it can give you correct metering and tell you what shutter speed to use for any given scene. Now this particular 6x7 I got fairly cheap, and the main reason for that was that this little chain is missing. So the chain has broken and they're quite easy to break. They're known for breaking. So what you need to do to not break the chain is read the manual, which says you either need to take the lens off or put the lens on before you put the meter prism on in order to interface correctly. I can't remember which off the top of my head, but whichever model you get, read the manual and it tells you whether or not to take the lens off. So that's very, very important if you do want to use one of the metered prisms. However, that has meant that with this, I'm pretty much just manually metering, which was one of the main reasons why I like the RZ. Although the prism is huge and weighs about the same as the camera, the metering system in it is phenomenal. It does everything, and I've essentially got just a walk around camera here that will do everything, including aperture priority and exposure compensation, everything like that built into the camera. With the Pentax, I'm having to take a separate meter reading. So pros and cons again, that could also be related to the age of the camera. The metering in those is going to be slightly less reliable just because it's older. The diodes in those do tend to fail with age. They become less reactive, and yeah, you can run into issues where the metering is either slightly under or slightly over, depending on, yeah, just with the age of it. Also with this, I've had to add a little bit of felt onto the back of the prism here and here, just to get this to stay inside more snugly. When I first got it, it was a bit loose, and when I was looking through, it would shift. If I put it into portrait orientation, the prism would shift, and then my view in the viewfinder would shift, and I wasn't 100% sure on my framing, and that meant a few of my shots weren't perfectly level. So that's just something to be careful of, but I just put a little bit of light seal foam in there and seemed to sort it out just fine. A few other little things. Because this is a fully electronic camera, you've got a little battery test here, white button on the back. You press that and the red light shows up, and then when you take your finger off, it goes off. So quite straightforward and a nice way to know that you've still got battery. Next to that, you've got shutter speed dial. So this will go all the way from 1,000th of a second to, well, 1 second, and then you've got bulb. So the reason it can do 1,000th of a second is because it's using that curtain shutter. So the shutter is going across the image in front of the film, whereas something like the Mamiya is using a leaf shutter. So it's a shutter that's built into the lens, and when you fire the camera, it exposes the whole film all at once, and is generally going to be more considered like a global shutter. So for things like flash, it means you can sync flash up to any speed, but means with the leaf shutter, you're generally limited to about 400th to 500th of a second. You do get some that go faster, but generally the leaf shutter maxes out at about 500th of a second. The curtain shutter, because it can change the width of the curtain, you can get up to 1,000th of a second. However, if you want to sync with a flash, you're limited to a 30th of a second. And that's because a 30th of a second is the fastest shutter speed where the whole focal plane is exposed at once, meaning that instantaneous flash can expose the whole negative all at once. That isn't much of an issue if you know how to use flash, but can be a hindrance if you're trying to cut out, say, ambient light by using flash. It won't do quite as good a job as the leaf shutter will. Ergonomics wise, the camera is generally more comfortable to use than, say, a Mamiya RZ, just because it's that more traditional styling and everything is where you expect it to be. You know where the focus is going to be is around the lens, and you get the apertures around the lens as well. However, they are very, very thin on the back. Pentax new at the time, so you can get a wooden hand grip which will let you control the camera or hold the camera more like this and gives you slightly more to hold on to. But again, that again has its own pros and cons, which I won't get into because I don't have the grip. So if you can, try and find one with a grip and hold it before you start using it. Once you start using it, you may see why some people either love it and some people hate it. So I'd recommend having a play. So now I'm going to show pictures I've taken with the Pentax. I've only had it about 4 months now, so I've shot a few rolls of film, but nothing significant. It has been my main camera for those 4 months. I think I've only shot 1 or 2 rolls through the Mamiya since then. So yeah, I'm gonna put the pictures up now, see what you think, and yeah, I'll finish with an outro in a sec. So those are my shots with the Pentax. They were all taken with the 90mm that I've got on there, mainly because it's a slightly smaller lens, but it's meant that I'm taking the camera out more and I'm using it more. I've had a few issues with having to take a separate meter just because I'd kind of got out of that rhythm. But yeah, so far it's been really, really good. I'm hoping that this will be my main camera for traveling. So if I ever go away, I can take a 6x7 camera and not be weighed down by the weight of it the whole time. Don't get me wrong, I love the RZ. It's my favorite camera ever made, but at the same time, it's not portable. It's not designed for portability. As much as I have wanted to deny that, the Pentax does seem to be a better way forward just for moving a camera around. So yeah, let me know what you think of the shots. Let me know if you've got any tips or tricks for using the Pentax, because I'm still fairly new to it. But I hope this little brief overview has helped someone out there who's thinking about getting a Pentax. And yeah, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and check out my Instagram if you want to see pictures. That's all going to be in the description. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.